Welcome to the Happy Dog Podcast. This podcast is designed to bring you ideas and uplifting information to help you live a meaningful and fulfilled life with your dog from a holistic perspective. Now, let's explore the world of a happy dog. Today, I'm here with Amanda Rhee, who is the founder of Sama Dog. She is a Canine Wellbeing Practitioner and speaker and a master educator of Ayurveda. I think I said that right. For dogs specifically, she's studied with Dr. Deepak Chopra and done meditation and yoga and Ayurveda study. She's taught people from all around the world how to live healthier, more natural, and spiritual lives. Now, the healing wisdom that she shares helps our dogs as well. So thank you, Amanda, for being here.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan, so I feel very blessed to be sharing this information and talking to your community.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So tell me and everybody listening about Ayurveda, which you helped me figure out how to pronounce just a second ago.
It is a little tricky.
Yeah.
Why don't we start there, as we just did, is how to pronounce it.
Yes.
So way, even without being able to see me, we can point to our eyes. So it's I, and then your hand to the person across from you, your Veda. Ayurveda. Ayurveda. Oh. So that's a nice way to kind of just get the pronunciation. Obviously, the way you spell it is just a slightly different, but yeah, that's the foundational understanding that is one of the legs of the stool, as they call it, the three legs of the stool in the Vedic knowledge. So the Vedic knowledge is the umbrella of teachings that come out of India that many of us are familiar with, like yoga and meditation. But there is this third pillar, third leg, called Ayurveda, and that's the holistic healing side, you could say the wellness side of it. And what Ayurveda actually means is the science of life. That's what it translates to, because it's a Sanskrit word. The word yoga is a Sanskrit word, which many of us, unless we're in that world and studied it a bit, we don't even realize that that's all another language. Namaste, all of those kinds of things, Shavasana, all that same language is Sanskrit, and Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word that means the science or the wisdom of life. So it's the science of nature, and therefore why it applies so beautifully to animals.
Yes, definitely. And so how did you get started with this?
So I have been studying with Dr. Deepak Chopra, who many of the listeners might be familiar with. He's a pretty well-known guy. He is a spiritual leader, one of the great ones of our time. He is a physician, an author, a speaker, and has a wellness center in San Diego, which I started working for about 15 years ago. I had already been studying yoga and meditation and Ayurveda at that time for 5 years or around there, and then found my way over to the Chopra Center, connected to the work of Deepak so deeply because it's rich and robust and well seasoned, well founded. He really holds the classical teachings into this modern world. I think that's a very unique path that he has been able to take in this world to teach us all. So as I started studying with him and felt just so connected to these teachings, knew that my life would continue along this path, and this is all I wanted to do with my time, was practice and share it. And so I started there in the event department, and I kind of worked my way up through the company, eventually making my way to the vice president of client services, and overseeing a great majority of the company and all of our live events and hosting all of the events, teaching all of the events. So yeah, we do these big meditation retreats all around the world with hundreds of people. And so I would kind of be the MC and conduct that whole thing. And
very cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Met people, the most beautiful people from around the world that are in such a deep, committed time in their life to transformation, to healing, to connection. So to like hang out, as we call it, like in that bubble.
Yeah.
For a while, really healing for me personally, and totally transforming. I did not grow up around this information at all. So it was pretty new So that was all those years ago. And then over the years, I continued obviously to be able to study with some of the great ones, not only Deepak, but all the amazing teachers that come through there, and meet them and ask all my questions. And eventually then, like you, got into the rescue world. Had always been very deeply connected to animals.
Mm.
Actually, where it really all began was when I was 3 years old. I was drowning in the backyard in the pool, and our Sheltie saved my life.
Oh my God. Wow.
Prince, my angel.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Shelties, they don't usually swim too much, and he just jumped right in there and saved me. So I literally wouldn't even be here without dogs. And as much as my mom shares and my dad shares that I was really close with the dog prior to that, at that point we were like besties forever. We were soulmates.
Mm.
And he lived with us until he was 18 years old. And so, obviously so was I. So that was a huge part of my life. My parents eventually ended up buying a pet store. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, and my parents owned the pet store there for many years in a little town,
Mm.
And I learned again so much more, and spent a lot of time with our veterinarians and with the experience of lots of animals in my life. And then, you get older, you kind of go in your separate ways. And then when I made my way back into this yoga world, I also made my way back to the animals, and that I just started fostering, just really got into fostering, really got into the rescue world, connected with several here in the San Diego area. So I had tons and tons of foster dogs coming in and out. And I absolutely loved it. And what started to open up to me was the fact that they expressed their imbalances in the exact same way that human beings do.
Mm.
It falls into these themes.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us, and even in all the studies that I've done on Ayurveda, no one really said a lot about applying it to animals. So most of us don't even really think about it so much. But when you do, you do. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this totally works. And because they're an expression of nature, it's the science of nature. So they come into alignment or back into balance, which is what Sama means, by the way. The name of my organization, SAMA, is balance, equanimity. They come back into that balance so easily if we give them the chance to with their environment. And that's really what it's all about, is knowing what signs of imbalance look like and what signs of balance look like, and being able to make the choices on behalf of our companion animals to bring them back into that state.
Yeah, I love it. I think that what you have, with the work that you've done in the past and then the work you're doing now and how it's all come together, it's like literally full circle with just the nature and the dogs and everything. It's so cool. So how do you see imbalances and balance and all that sort of thing with dogs?
So some listeners might be familiar with the doshas. So this is like a Sanskrit lesson for all of you.
Perfect.
So there's our second Sanskrit word, or I've mentioned others, I suppose. But dosha, D-O-S-H-A, D-S, dog, that is your body-mind type. So there are, in the body of science, of Ayurveda, there are 3 primary body-mind types called doshas that are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. So simply said, what those are a combination of the elements, the earth's elements, the 5 great elements, as Ayurveda calls it. It's a combination of twos, to create each of these body-mind types. And what the body-mind types are is they're the personality. They're the personality of our being. So kind of what comes through our mind, our emotions, our behaviors, but also the personality, you could say, of our body. What is the tendency of the body? In the case of Vata, which is a combination of air and space, that body and mind tends to be like airy, like, dry and constantly moving, flexible, inconsistent, light, kind of floating all over the place, needing ideally groundedness and grounding. So when we look at imbalance for Vata, when they're in a place of balance, these beings are, just to look at that first dosha, Vata, B-A-T-A, those beings airy, spacey beings are very outgoing and charismatic, and they're dogs or humans that really like to engage with others. They're friendly. They're very open for change because that's their nature. And yet, when out of balance, that lightness, that windiness that they have can start to float away like a balloon. And then they will get skinny, dry, irritated, anxious, and very it's just ungrounded overall. And so when we notice that in our dogs or humans, we can then make choices to help them get a little bit heavier physically as well as mentally through the senses. And that's how really Ayurveda comes at the healing or in the balancing, is we work through the senses. And we all know how sensory oriented animals are, especially our dogs with smell and sound, especially, and taste.
Yes.
It's a good one for them too.
Yes, definitely.
So that's one of the doshas, and that ungroundedness you can see again with dogs, just like nervousness. Think of going into the shelter and you've got that little shaky dog that's over in the corner and it's quivering. It's even whining a little bit. And that's all this activity is very ungrounded and therefore Vata expression.
Got it.
Then the second dosha is a combination of fire and water. So this is Pitta, Pitta. When Pitta is expressed in balance, dog or animal, these beings are very like fire, like really driven and motivated and fiery in their being. They're bright. People are attracted to them. They're charismatic. They're workers and doers. They get it done. When out of balance, when too much fire and water start to happen, you've got really hot, like penetrating steam at that point, right? From an elemental standpoint. And that can be too hot. It can start to scorch people or themselves. So what will happen with inflammation oftentimes with a lot of heat, or that inflammation will get into the mind, which will become maybe a little aggressive or intense or reactive. And reddish. So whether it's reddish in the eyes or reddish on the belly or reddish in the kind of just the skin in general, a lot of those problems tend to be the root of Pitta imbalance, a little bit too much fire and water. So what we want to do to balance them is to cool them out and just kind of pacify, soothe. So then the last of the three doshas is Kapha, Kapha. And what Kapha is all about, the combination of the elements, is earth and water. When those two come together, it creates a being that is very stable, calm, grounded, methodical, consistent, loyal, easygoing. You can just kind of feel that heavier energy of earth. We've got these people in our lives, they're typically, all of us have at least one Kapha friend that we go to, shoulder to cry on. And, they're great. They always remember your birthday. They're those wonderful kinds of friends and beings. They're easygoing dogs that you've got to climb around or, aren't too demanding. My Kapha's laying here next to me. She's the only one I could bring around during a recording because she's just that consistent and loyal and easy. I know she's not going to make any noise. But when out of balance, they become too earthy. They become too heavy. So what does that look like? They become dull, inert, lazy, heavy, sticky even. So like in the body, it'll become congestion, even around the heart or maybe even in the chest, mucus, a lot of ear infections, just kind of a smelliness, a slowness. They don't want to get activated and walk much anymore. They're just not the energy pup they used to be. And so for them, what we're looking to do is bring more invigoration, stimulation, and that will bring them into balance. So that's the big idea. When you come to understand those three doshas, the body mind types, you come to kind of look at beings around you through those lenses. And once you start to see it, and probably through the explanation I just gave you already can start to see your animals or your human friends. Then you start to recognize, what do they need to stay in balance, or what do they need to come back into balance?
Yes. No, as you were saying all those things, I was like, okay, that's definitely Izzy. That's definitely Mila. So it's so cool. And so you with Sama Dog, you will help people or you'll help their dogs get back into balance, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really are. What I see Samadog is a hub of education, of inspiration also, because this is deeply heart-centered work, and of resources, whatever that is, whether it's online class or a physical class or a consultation physically or online, or even products that we create, but all of these resources for people to be able to access to be able to, yes, then apply to their own dogs' lives. And the beautiful thing is that they're applying it to their own lives too, because it totally matters. It applies rather straight across the board to everyone. And you and I and most anybody listening to this both know how deeply impacted our animals, especially the ones that are really close to us in our physical space or in our heart, how impacted they are by our own well-being and balance. So when an animal is out of balance, very commonly the human is a bit out of balance. They might be in denial of that imbalance.
Yep.
I have been that human many times.
Yeah.
But usually there is some level of, well, this is what I will hear so often after we talk about the dog. And then I'll say, well, is there anything like that going on for you? And they'll say, there is. I have that same situation. I never thought of it.
Wow.
So there is such a reflection in those relationships back and forth, and so much healing potential there too.
Is there, whether it's a story with you and one of your dogs or a client dog, that you'd be able to share about being out of balance and coming back into balance, that really you saw Ayurveda like working so well for the dog and the human?
Yes, definitely. How I really, so as I said, I got into this because I started to see it reflected, the doshas, that is, and kind of this whole body of knowledge reflected through the rescue dogs I was working with. However, as I was noticing all of that and just observing and kind of trying to make parallels and things like that, meanwhile, I was in a very stressful time in my life, total overwhelm. I was still in my full-time role at the Chopra Center, and things had gotten just extremely busy, and I'd taken on way too many projects, and I was in a bad space and feeling desperate. I was explaining, well, at that same time, our dog Maya, who we still have, she is a 9-year-old cockapoo, and she's our sweetheart. She's little black cockapoo. Maybe you've seen her around on our stuff. Yeah. So Maya was going through extreme, what was labeled as, or kind of the prognosis was that this is extreme allergies. And yet none of the support that was coming, whether it was pharmaceuticals or injections or pills of some kind, they were not working. Nothing was working. And she was just getting sicker and sicker, to the point where we were losing her. It was so intense. She was a bag of bones. She had plucked off all the hair on her whole belly. Her feet were raw. All her pads were raw and bloody. Her ears were infected. She had a UTI. She wouldn't eat. Her hair was in terrible condition. I couldn't really take her out of the house because she looked like a horribly abused dog, or a dog that was terribly neglected, even though we were trying so hard. And she was constantly whining, this like light, high-pitched whine at all times. And she was always gnawing on herself. There was no stillness, no calm and ease in this dog at all. And so as I was sharing with my husband one day how I was feeling in my work and the overwhelm, how I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat and I was ungrounded and there was no experience of peace in me. His wise answer was, well, exactly how you're feeling is how Maya's acting. And that moment was a big moment, because I had never, even though I was already kind of thinking about the relationship of Ayurveda and animals, I really hadn't seen the way that we affect each other so much. So first I felt guilty and terrible and sad. And I cry now, even thinking about it, even though we're over it, but it's a deep thing to be affecting others around you.
Totally.
And, sometimes we'll heal for others and make good choices for others more than we will do so for ourselves. So I said, well, that's it. I know what to do. I know how to bring myself back into balance. I'm just going to try to do all the same stuff for Maya. And I did. So everything from the physical things. In this case, Maya was out of balance in Vata. She was airy and spacey and was floating away. Her body was so thin. She was totally ungrounded. She couldn't sit still. There was no earth in this little body, not much left, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything from warm, moist, and oily foods, like that's just one little perspective that you'll take into Vata balancing with anybody. Warm, moist, and oily foods. We really changed it up there. We brought in some Ayurvedic herbs that help to calm and ground the body and mind. We brought in other grounding foods that are specific to the known taste, certain tastes like sweet, sour, salty, which are known to create more weight and heaviness in the body and therefore help the body to ground. So that's what we did for her body, was bringing in choice foods and herbs, supplements, more hydration, things like that. But then, of course, moving into the mind, we brought her to meditation. Yes, some could say, well, dogs don't know how to meditate or they can't. Or some could say dogs are in a perpetual state of meditation.
It's true, all
of those would be worth a conversation. But what I do know, and I experience every day, is that dogs really like to meditate. They like the experience of you, their beloved human, meditating. They love feeling and seeing you in such a peaceful and relaxed and open, receptive, present space. And they respond extremely well to that by going into that space themselves. They're really just a reflection. So if you're that, they will be that too. So that helped a lot. I started to work with chakras. I came to study more and more about chakras and how they relate to animals, and started to balance her chakras, her energy centers within her body, and recognize where some of those imbalances were. We also started to work with flower essences a lot with Maya to help to balance her mind and emotions. Flower essences, very different than essential oils, are something that a lot of people aren't as familiar with, but I really got into it. And for animals, not only is it a wonderfully subtle healing tool, but it really gets to that emotional side of animals, which is a little more tricky to target or to work with. Behavior is one thing, but emotions is a bit of a different thing. And so flower essences were a wonderful way to kind of allow more integration of all the goodness that we were doing. And so, on that mental, behavioral, emotional side, we really spoke to that a lot, like on a daily basis, even twice or three times a day, like really integrated these practices into her life and into my life. And, with affirmations and intention setting and even things like that might sound a little kooky and far out. But again, the energy that most of us know is very powerful in our lives and has a big influence on our being and on our joy, is certainly something that animals are working with as well. So if we can work with that, we can help to heal them and to balance them. And the good news is that Maya made a 100% recovery.
She didn't have to
be on any of those medications that they said that she would be on for the rest of her life.
Wow.
She is now a sturdy, furry, grounded, always, once you're a dosha, you always have that predominant dosha. So she's still Vata. So she's still like really friendly and quite barky and always jumping up, the dog that is very challenging to get 4 feet on the ground all the time, but a very balanced version of herself and eats consistently and loves life. And it's just, she was my inspiration and my muse to so much more.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story. And the fact that you did all that and, she made a full recovery, like it goes to show that this is real and this is working. And that's why I love energy work, because even though some people say, oh, it's kind of like out there, but the proof is like in your dogs, honestly, with energy work, I feel like. So, True. And so you have Maya and Benny and Graham and Violet are your dogs, right?
Yes, you are.
And you also run a dog being Bee. And how does that work too when you have so many different personalities in your house?
Yeah, you have to, you do some matchmaking off the bat.
Yeah.
Not every dog that wants to come to Samadogs B&B is allowed, unfortunately. Just sometimes they're just not the right mix or the right energy. Safety, of course, and comfort and healing is what this place is all about. So if a dog energy is going to come in and throw that off, then no one's better for that, not including that dog that was coming. So we try to be really careful with that. And then what you'll find, and why we very specifically chose a Vata, Pitta, and Kapha dog, and then we added one more into the mix because we foster failed, and she's just a kind of a wonderful blend of them all, actually.
Yeah.
But when we saw that, and somewhat intentionally did that, we really saw that balance being maintained in the household. And that doesn't mean that every single one of us has to have 3 dogs, one of each of the doshas. It's not like that.
Yeah.
But it is, the more beings you have in a space together, the more aware of what their body, mind, personality is, the more helpful that will be to you. So say a bunch of kaphas live together, kapha people, kapha dogs, like the energy is going to be kind of low. And so you'll need to make sure that you have something that gets in there and spices it up. So what we do with the B&B is we just come to recognize the personality type of the dog when they come in, and then match them into our environment in the best way that we can. And once in a while, of course, a dog is here that isn't either getting along well or is like agitating the others. And so we had custom baby gates installed all over this house.
Yeah.
And so we just divide them up into separate rooms sometimes, all kind of on that same floor. So they all get to enjoy each other, but have just enough separation. And that helps to maintain everything. But yeah, mealtime's always interesting because this one needs a little of this and that one needs a little more of that. And
I bet.
yeah, a science experiment in there.
Yeah, for sure. I bet that is like a puzzle to put together is mealtime. Well, very cool. And so you also, I know, do the Samadog Saturday meditations on your Facebook. Why don't you tell everybody about that and how they can follow you that way?
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, there's a couple ways to stay connected if anyone is really interested in this or would like to learn more, maybe even come to learn what your dog's dosha or body mind type is. You can go to samadog, samadog.com/quiz. And that is a body mind type a quiz for your dogs. So it's a lot of fun, and you could just go through there, answer the questions. Don't think too much about it. That's what some of us get hung up on these things. But don't think too much about it. You just kind of answer instinctively. Answer from the place in which your dog was its most balanced. So if your dog is having a big moment right now, whether it's physical or behavioral, just go back to before that happened so that we can basically try to kind of understand the baseline of your dog, their baseline dosha. So that's one way. And then once you take the quiz, it'll lead you through to more information, a little video on each, all kinds of resources. We have online courses and consultation, like I mentioned. And then the Sama Saturdays, as you just said, thank you for that, every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, that is, on Sama Dog Wellbeing. That's the Facebook page name. We come on live, and I am either doing an interview with a holistic animal practitioner of some sort, like our holistic vet, Dr. Katie Kangas, a really well-known vet here in San Diego. She comes on once a month. We have a great trainer, Zoe Sandor, that's going to come on once a month. We have upcoming, even just in the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about grief, really specialize into that conversation. We will be talking about senior dogs with some senior dog rescue folks here in San Diego. So we just dive into different topics on holistic dog wellness, sometimes have an interview, sometimes it's just me. And then sometimes we'll do a meditation with our dogs where we just sit down on my couch all together, all of us, and you on your couch. And we have a 20-minute or so meditation together with our animals and just feel united in that way.
Love it. So great. Yes, I have watched some of your meditations, and they're definitely just a great way to like stop everything and sit with your dogs and really focus on the now. So I urge everyone to check out Samadog and all the work Amanda's doing, and I'll link everything up in the show notes too. But thank you so much for your in-depth explanation about everything and sharing the story about Maya. I think a lot of people will find it helpful for sure.
Well, fantastic. Well, it's been wonderful to be with you and your community. I absolutely love helping people to see their dogs in a deeper way, let's just say, a more expanded way. And you and your work does that so well and to such a huge audience. So I really want to honor you too, Alicia, for the work and the connection and the platform that you're giving to so many of us to learn, grow.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thanks again. And thank you to everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time on another episode.